The first bullet shattered the glass doors at 11:47 a.m., and everyone in the emergency bay hit the floor. Everyone except the woman in scrubs standing near the supply closet. She didn't scream, didn't duck. Her hand moved to her pocket, fingers brushing something small and metal, then stopped. She exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the lobby like she was counting exits, angles, cover points. Like she'd done this before. Her name was Lena Voss, and for 3 years she'd been the quietest nurse at Harborline Military Medical Center in Raven City. Soft-spoken. Forgettable. The kind of person people talked over in meetings, assigned the grunt work, never trusted with anything critical. But in the span of 4 minutes, she would remind an entire hospital and a team of armed intruders that the most dangerous person in any room is the one nobody's watching. Before we go any further, if you want to see how this story ends, stay with me all the way through. Drop a like, leave a comment with the city you're watching from, so I can see just how far this story travels. Let's get into it. The morning had started like every other. Lena clocked in at 6 a.m., nodded to the security guard who never remembered her name, and made her way to the nurses' station on the 3rd floor. She poured herself black coffee from the communal pot, the kind that tasted like burnt metal, and sat in the corner chair that nobody else wanted, the one with the torn vinyl and the wobbly leg. Around her, the day shift filtered in. Voices overlapped, complaints about traffic, weekend plans, a new attending physician who supposedly looked like a soap opera actor. Lena said nothing. She sipped her coffee and reviewed the patient board, her eyes moving methodically down the list of names, conditions, medication schedules. "Morning, Voss." She glanced up. Dr. Richard Calloway stood at the counter, flipping through a chart without looking at her. He was in his early 50s, silver-haired, the kind of man who wore his authority like a tailored suit. He'd been at Harborline for 12 years and made sure everyone knew it. "Good morning, Dr. Calloway," he grunted. "You're on post-op today. Room 312 needs a catheter change, and the guy in 307 keeps pulling his IV. Handle it." "Of course." He walked away before she finished speaking. 2 nurses near the coffee station exchanged glances. One of them, Bryn, young and blonde and always laughing too loud, leaned toward the other. Does she ever say more than 2 words? Maybe she's shy. Or just boring. They laughed. Not cruel exactly, just dismissive. The kind of laughter that assumes the person they're talking about doesn't matter enough to hear it. Lena set her cup down, stood, and headed toward the patient rooms. Her expression didn't change. It never did. By mid-morning, the 3rd floor was humming. A post-surgical case rolled in from the OR, a Marine with a shrapnel wound who'd been stabilized but needed monitoring. Lena checked his vitals, adjusted his IV drip, noted the slight tremor in his left hand. Nerve damage, probably temporary. She made a note in his chart and moved to the next room. In 307, an older man with a bandaged shoulder glared at her from the bed. "I don't need another damn needle." "You pulled your IV out twice, Mr. Davison. If you do it again, we'll have to restrain your hands." "Try it." She met his eyes, didn't blink. After a moment, he looked away. "I'll be back in an hour to check on you," she said quietly, and left. In the hallway, Bryn caught up to her, holding a tablet. "Hey, Voss, Calloway wants you to prep the guy in ICU for transport. They're moving him to radiology at noon." "Which patient?" "The one in isolation. Bryn glanced at her screen. "The classified one. Military escort and everything. Don't ask me details. They didn't tell us squat." Lena nodded. "I'll take care of it." Bryn hesitated. "You sure?" Calloway said it's high priority. "If you mess it up, I won't." Bryn shrugged and walked off. Lena stood there for a moment, staring at nothing. Then she turned and headed toward the ICU. The patient in isolation was a Marine captain, mid-30s, recovering from emergency surgery after an IED incident overseas. His chart was sparse, most of it redacted, stamped with classifications Lena wasn't supposed to understand. But she did. She understood more than anyone in this building realized. She entered the room, gloves on, mask up. The captain was sedated, vitals stable. 2 guards stood outside the door, rifles slung, faces blank. Lena worked quietly, checking his lines, adjusting the ventilator settings. One of the guards glanced in through the window. She didn't acknowledge him. When she finished, she stepped into the hall and peeled off her gloves. The taller guard looked at her. He's stable? For now. Good. We're moving him at noon. Stay clear of the transport corridor. She nodded and walked away. The rhythm of the hospital continued around her like a machine that never stopped. Gurneys rolled past, their wheels squeaking on linoleum that had been mopped so many times the pattern had faded to a dull gray. Overhead, the PA system crackled with pages for doctors whose names Lena had memorized by sound alone. She navigated the corridors with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years learning to be invisible, to move through spaces without leaving an impression. At 10:15, she was changing the dressing on a burn victim in room 318 when Dr. Calloway appeared in the doorway. He didn't knock, just stood there, arms crossed, watching her work with the kind of scrutiny that made most nurses nervous. Lena didn't look up. She finished securing the gauze, noted the time on the patient's chart, and disposed of her gloves in the red biohazard bin. Voss? Yes, doctor. The captain in ICU. I'm pulling you off that case. She turned to face him. May I ask why? Because I need someone with more experience handling high-profile military patients. Mitchell's going to take over. Bryn Mitchell, the same nurse who'd been gossiping about Lena in the break room that morning. She had 2 years of experience to Lena's 6, but she smiled more, talked more, made people feel comfortable. That counted for something in Calloway's world. I've already prepped him for transport, Lena said evenly. His vitals are stable, and I'm familiar with his case. Which is why you can brief Mitchell. She'll take it from here. Calloway glanced at his watch. I need you in the ER. They're short-staffed, and we've got a trauma coming in from a car accident on the interstate. It wasn't a request. Lena nodded once, picked up her clipboard, and walked past him into the hallway. Behind her, she heard him mutter to someone, probably an intern. She's competent enough, but she doesn't have the personality for high-stakes cases. You need someone who can think on their feet. Lena's jaw tightened, but she kept walking. The ER was chaos. A 30-car pileup on Interstate 9 had flooded the trauma bays with patients. Broken bones, lacerations, a teenager with a collapsed lung. Lena moved through it like a shadow, assisting where needed, anticipating requests before they were made. She intubated a man whose airway was closing, held pressure on a femoral bleed while a surgeon prepped for emergency surgery, and talked a panicking mother through signing consent forms for her daughter's operation. No one thanked her. No one noticed. By 11:30, the worst of it had stabilized. Lena stepped into the break room, peeled off her blood-smeared gloves, and washed her hands in the sink. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirror, pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a bun so tight it gave her headaches. She looked tired. She always looked tired. She dried her hands and sat at the small table in the corner. From her bag, she pulled out a sandwich she'd packed that morning, turkey on wheat, no condiments. She ate mechanically, chewing without tasting, her mind elsewhere. The TV in the corner was on, muted. Some news anchor was talking, their mouth moving silently while footage of a protest played behind them. Lena glanced at it, then away. She'd stopped paying attention to the news 2 years ago. It was easier that way. Her phone buzzed, a text from her landlord. Rent's due tomorrow. Don't be late again. She typed a short reply. I'll have it, and set the phone down. She took another bite of her sandwich and stared at the table. 3 years. 3 years since she'd walked away from everything. 3 years since she'd buried the person she used to be and built this quiet, unremarkable life in its place. Some days it felt like a lifetime. Other days it felt like yesterday. The lights flickered. Lena's hand froze halfway to her mouth. The fluorescent tubes overhead stuttered once, twice, then steadied. Around her, the 2 orderlies at the other table kept talking, oblivious. One of them was complaining about his fantasy football team. Lena set down her sandwich and stood. She walked to the break room door, opened it, and stepped into the hallway. It was empty. Quiet. But not the normal kind of quiet. This was the kind that sat heavy in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. She moved toward the stairwell at the far end of the corridor. Her footsteps were soft, deliberate. When she reached the door, she pushed it open just enough to listen. Voices, low and clipped, coming from below. Secure the east wing first. No alarms until we have the target. Copy. What about the staff? Herd them into the cafeteria. Anyone resists, put them down. Lena's pulse didn't spike. It dropped, settling into a slow, steady rhythm. She recognized that tone, that cadence. Military training, but not U.S. military. The syntax was wrong, the phrasing too formal. She let the door close silently and stepped back into the hallway. Her mind was already moving: exit routes, weapon caches, civilian density. She pulled out her phone and dialed a 3-digit emergency code. It rang once, then disconnected. No answer, but the call would log. Someone would see it. She turned and headed toward the main elevator. Not running. Running drew attention. The elevator doors opened and she stepped inside. 2 nurses got in with her, both of them chatting about lunch plans. Lena stood in the back corner, hands folded in front of her, face blank. The elevator descended. At the 2nd floor, the doors opened. The 2 nurses stepped out, still talking. Lena stayed where she was. The doors closed again and the elevator continued down to the 1st floor. When the doors opened this time, she heard it. Screaming, she stepped out into the lobby. Across the wide open space, 4 men in black tactical gear were moving through the crowd like wolves through a herd. Rifles up, faces covered. One of them grabbed a receptionist by the hair and shoved her toward the cafeteria entrance. The woman stumbled, her glasses falling to the floor. "Move! Everyone into the cafeteria, now!" People scrambled, some of them crying, others frozen in place. A doctor in a white coat tried to reason with one of the gunmen. The gunman raised his rifle and fired a single shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. The doctor went silent. Lena pressed herself against the wall, just out of sight behind a pillar. She watched, counted. 4 in the lobby, probably more upstairs. They moved with precision. No wasted motion, no hesitation. This wasn't a robbery. It wasn't random violence. This was an extraction. And the only high-value target in this building was in the ICU. She slipped into a side corridor, moving toward the service elevator. Her breathing was calm, her hand steady. Somewhere deep inside, a part of her she'd spent 3 years burying was waking up, stretching, remembering what it used to be. The service elevator was older, slower, used mostly by maintenance staff. She hit the button and waited. The doors opened with a groan. She stepped inside and pressed the button for the 3rd floor. As the elevator climbed, she closed her eyes. In her mind, she walked through the layout of the ICU. 1 main entrance, 1 service door at the back. 2 guards stationed outside the isolation room, maybe more by now if the intruders had already reached that floor. If they were smart, and they seemed smart, they'd split their team. Some to secure exits, some to extract the target. The elevator chimed. 3rd floor. The doors opened onto chaos, gunfire, shouting, the sound of something heavy crashing to the floor. Lena stepped out into the corridor and saw a nurse sprinting toward her, face streaked with tears, scrubs torn at the shoulder. The nurse grabbed Lena's arm. "They're shooting people. They're..." "Where?" "ICU. They broke through the door. The guards tried to stop them, but..." Her voice cracked. "Oh my God, there's so much blood." Lena gently pried the woman's hand off her arm. Her voice was calm, almost soft. "Go to the stairwell. Take it down to the basement. There's a morgue on the sublevel. Lock yourself inside and don't come out until you hear sirens." "What about you?" "I'll be fine. Go." The nurse hesitated for a fraction of a second, then turned and ran. Lena watched her disappear around the corner, then turned toward the ICU. She passed a supply closet, ducked inside. The shelves were stocked with the usual: gauze, syringes, IV bags. She scanned quickly, grabbed a scalpel from a surgical tray, and slid it into her pocket. Not much, but enough. She stepped back into the hallway and moved faster now, no longer trying to stay invisible. The time for hiding was over. Ahead, a man rounded the corner, tactical vest, rifle slung across his chest, earpiece in his left ear. He saw her and raised the weapon. "On the ground, now!" Lena didn't move. She looked at him, really looked. Noted the slight hesitation in his stance, the way his finger hovered near the trigger but wasn't on it yet. He thought she was just a nurse, just another scared civilian. "I said, get on the..." She crossed the distance in 2 strides. Her hand shot out, palm striking the barrel of the rifle upward, just as he squeezed the trigger. The shot went into the ceiling tiles, plaster raining down. Before he could recover, she twisted the weapon from his grip, yanked it sideways with both hands, and drove her elbow into his throat. He dropped, gagging, hands clawing at his neck. Lena crouched, stripped the earpiece from his ear, and slid it into her own. Static crackled, then voices. "3rd floor clear?" Not yet. Still securing the east wing. Copy. Target is mobile. Prep for extraction in 2 minutes. She dropped the earpiece onto the man's chest, picked up the rifle, checked the magazine. 3/4 full. She slung it over her shoulder and kept moving. The ICU doors were ajar. She slowed as she approached, pressing herself against the wall. Through the gap, she could see bodies. 2 guards, down but breathing. One of them had a tourniquet on his leg, blood pooling beneath him. The other was unconscious, a gash across his forehead. Beyond them, inside the ward, shadows moved. 3 men, maybe 4. One of them was at the door to the isolation room, cutting through the electronic lock with a plasma torch. Sparks flew, bright and white in the dim corridor. Lena stopped at the threshold. She lifted the rifle, shouldered it, and aimed through the doorway. The man with the torch glanced up. His eyes met hers through the gap in the door. For a fraction of a second, neither of them moved. Then she fired. The shot took him in the chest. He dropped, the torch clattering to the floor, still burning. The other spun, scrambling for cover. One of them shouted something in a language Lena recognized but didn't speak. Russian, or close to it. She moved sideways, using the doorframe for protection, and fired again. Another man went down, clutching his shoulder, his rifle skittering across the floor. Return fire shredded the wall next to her head. She dropped low, rolled into the ICU, and came up behind the nurse's station. 2 left, both of them shouting, coordinating. Professionals. She breathed out slowly. Checked the rifle's magazine, half empty now. One of them called out, his accent thick. "You picked wrong day to be hero, lady." She didn't answer, just listened. Footsteps moving left. The other one circling right, classic pincer maneuver. They were trying to flank her. Lena waited. Let them close in. Let them think they had the advantage. Then she stood, spun, and fired twice in quick succession, left, then right. Both men staggered. The one on the left collapsed immediately, his vest taking most of the impact, but not enough. The one on the right fell to his knees, gasping, blood seeping through the gaps in his armor. She walked over, rifle still raised. He looked up at her, eyes wide with shock and pain. Who the hell are you?" She didn't answer, just kicked his weapon aside and kept moving toward the isolation room. The door was open now. The lock burned through. Inside, the Marine captain was still sedated, unaware of the firefight that had just taken place around him. His vitals were stable on the monitor. Lena checked them quickly, then grabbed the IV pole and began wheeling the bed toward the service door at the back of the ICU. Behind her, sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer. She reached the service door, shoved it open with her shoulder, and pulled the bed into the narrow maintenance corridor beyond. It was dim here, lit only by emergency lights spaced every 20 feet. She moved quickly, guiding the bed toward the freight elevator at the far end. Her earpiece, the one she'd taken from the first hostile, crackled again. "All units, abort. Repeat, abort. Federal response inbound. Extraction window closed." She allowed herself a single, quiet breath. Then the freight elevator doors opened in front of her, and she pushed the captain's bed inside. As the doors began to close, she saw movement at the end of the corridor. A figure, tall, military-bearing, moving toward her with purpose. Not one of the hostiles. This one wore a U.S. Army uniform, insignia she recognized even from a distance. The elevator doors closed. Lena leaned against the wall, rifle still in her hands, her reflection staring back at her from the polished metal. The elevator descended, slowly, the old mechanism groaning with the weight of the bed and equipment. Lena counted the floors in her head. 3, 2, 1. Basement. The doors opened. 2 MPs were waiting, weapons drawn. When they saw her, a nurse in blood-splattered scrubs holding a rifle, they hesitated for just a moment. Then one of them spoke into his radio. "We have the package. Status, secure." The other MP looked at Lena, eyes scanning her face, the rifle, the blood. "Ma'am, we need you to put the weapon down." She set the rifle on the floor carefully, stepped away from it, raised her hand slightly, not in surrender but in acknowledgement. "Is the building clear?" she asked. "Almost. FBI's doing a final sweep now. You're the nurse who neutralized the hostiles on the 3rd floor." "Yes." The MP exchanged a glance with his partner. "We're going to need you to come with us. There are people who want to talk to you." She nodded. "Understood." They escorted her through a service tunnel that ran beneath the hospital, concrete walls lined with pipes and electrical conduits. The air was cool, damp. Their footsteps echoed. Neither of the MPs spoke, but she could feel their eyes on her, could sense the questions they weren't asking. The tunnel opened into an exterior lot behind the hospital. Outside, the world was a blur of flashing lights. Police cars, armored vehicles, FBI tactical units. Agents in black gear moved in coordinated patterns, sweeping the perimeter, securing exits. News helicopters circled overhead, their rotors thumping against the afternoon sky. Lena stood in the middle of it all, hands at her sides, face blank. Around her, the controlled chaos of a federal response unfolded like a choreographed dance. An older man approached. He wore an army uniform, colonel's insignia on his shoulders, graying hair cut military short. He stopped a few feet away, studying her with the kind of gaze that had seen too many things and believed too few of them. "You're Voss." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "What the hell were you doing up there?" "My job." His jaw tightened. "Your job is to change bedpans and take vitals. What you did up there..." He gestured vaguely toward the building. "That wasn't nursing." She met his eyes, didn't flinch. "They were going to kill people. I stopped them." With military-grade precision and tactical efficiency. He stepped closer. "I've seen the footage from the security cameras. You moved like someone with training. A lot of training." Lena said nothing. The colonel's eyes narrowed. "We'll need a full debrief. And by we, I mean people with a lot more clearance than me. People who are very interested in how a civilian nurse managed to take down 4 armed hostiles without breaking a sweat. I'd like to check on the patients first." "The patients are fine. You're coming with us." It wasn't a request. 2 more MPs appeared, flanking her, not aggressive, but present, a reminder that she didn't have a choice. They led her to a black SUV parked at the edge of the lot. One of the MPs opened the back door. Lena climbed in. The door closed behind her and the vehicle pulled away from the hospital, cutting through the perimeter of emergency vehicles and heading toward the main road. She looked out the window as they drove. Raven City stretched out around them, glass towers downtown, row houses in the residential districts, the river cutting through the center like a scar. She'd lived here for 3 years, worked at Harborline for 2.5, built a life so ordinary, so unremarkable, that no one would ever look twice. But now everything was unraveling. The SUV turned onto a side street, then into an underground parking garage. They descended 3 levels before stopping. The MPs got out first, opened her door. She stepped into the fluorescent-lit space, concrete pillars stretching in every direction. They led her to an elevator. One of the MPs swiped a keycard, and the doors opened. Inside there were no buttons, no floor indicators, just a single panel with a biometric scanner. The elevator descended. How far? She couldn't tell. When the doors opened again, she was in a corridor that looked like it belonged in a government building. Gray walls, linoleum floors, security cameras in every corner. They walked her to a room at the end of the hall. One of the MPs opened the door. Inside was a small conference room, table, 4 chairs, a mirror on one wall that was definitely two-way glass. She'd sat in rooms like this before, on the other side of the mirror. "Wait here," the MP said, and closed the door. Lena sat, folded her hands on the table, and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 15. She didn't move, didn't fidget, just sat there, breathing evenly, her mind quiet. The door opened. A woman stepped in, late 40s, sharp suit, dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She carried a folder which she set on the table as she sat down across from Lena. "My name is Agent Marlowe. I'm with DOD Intelligence." She opened the folder, glanced at the papers inside, then looked up. "And according to this, you don't exist." Lena's expression didn't change. Marlowe continued, her voice measured. 3 years ago, a Black Ops operative codenamed Spectre 1 went dark. Disappeared after a mission in Chernivka, Eastern Europe. No extraction, no contact, no body. The official report said she was killed in an explosion during exfil, closed casket, military funeral, full honors. She leaned back in her chair. "Except there was no body, was there?" Lena said nothing. "You want to tell me how a dead operative ends up working as a nurse in Raven City?" "I retired." Marlowe's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. You don't retire from what you did. You don't just walk away from black ops and take up bedside manner. I did. Why? Lena looked at the table. For the first time since sitting down, her expression shifted, just slightly, like a crack forming in ice. Because I was tired of killing people. The room fell silent. Marlowe studied her, fingers tapping lightly on the folder. And today? What was that? Instinct. Instinct. Marlowe repeated the words slowly. You neutralized 4 trained operatives in under 5 minutes. You moved through a hostile environment like you'd done it 1,000 times. That's not instinct. That's muscle memory. Lena lifted her eyes. What do you want from me? The truth. Who were those men? What were they after? You already know what they were after. The Marine captain in ICU, the one with the classified file. And why would they want him? Because of what he knows, or what he saw. You'd have to ask them. Marlowe closed the folder. We will. But right now, I'm more interested in you. She leaned forward. You know what happens now, don't you? The minute this gets out, the minute anyone realizes who you really are, it's over. Every enemy you made, every government you crossed, every target you eliminated, they'll come looking. And next time, it won't just be you in the crosshairs, it'll be everyone around you. Lena's jaw tightened. Then don't let it get out. That's not how this works. Make it work. Marlowe stared at her for a long moment. Then she stood, picked up the folder, and walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the handle. We'll be in touch. The door closed. Lena sat alone in the conference room, hands still folded on the table, her reflection staring back at her from the two-way mirror. She thought about the life she'd built, the small apartment on the east side of the city, the morning coffee that tasted like burnt metal, the patients who never knew her name, the colleagues who never saw her. It had been enough. For 3 years, it had been enough. But now, sitting in this windowless room with government agents watching her from the other side of the glass, she realized the truth. It had never been about enough. It had been about hiding. And hiding only worked as long as no one was looking. The door opened again. This time, it was the colonel from earlier. He stepped inside, closed the door, and stood there for a moment, arms crossed. They're debating what to do with you, he said finally. Some people think you're an asset. Some think you're a liability. Me? I think you're a damn miracle. He pulled out a chair and sat. That Marine captain you saved? His name is Vincent Cross. He was part of a reconnaissance unit operating in the Cordova region. 3 weeks ago, his team was ambushed. Everyone died except him. And according to the little bit of intel we've managed to piece together, he saw something before the ambush. Something that a lot of very dangerous people don't want getting out. Lena listened. Those men who attacked the hospital today, they weren't random. They were sent, and they'll send more. He leaned forward. You stopped them this time. But what about next time? What about the time after that? What are you asking me? I'm asking if you're done hiding. She looked at him. I'm not going back. I'm not asking you to, but maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe you can keep doing what you're doing, saving lives instead of taking them, but with backup, with resources, with people who know what you're capable of and can make sure you don't have to do it alone. You want me to work for you. I want you to stop pretending you're someone you're not. He stood. Think about it, but don't think too long. Because whether you like it or not, you're back on the radar, and the people looking for you don't forget. He left. The door closed again. Lena sat in the silence, the weight of his words settling over her like a heavy coat. She thought about the moment in the ICU when she'd picked up that rifle, when muscle memory had taken over and she'd stopped being Lena Voss, the quiet nurse, and become something else, something she'd tried so hard to bury. She thought about the scared faces of the patients, the nurses who'd run, the blood on the floor. She thought about this Marine captain, sedated and unaware, his life hanging in the balance because of something he'd seen. And she thought about the version of herself she'd left behind 3 years ago, the one who'd operated in shadows, who'd made impossible decisions, who'd carried the weight of missions that had no names and left no trace. That version of her had walked away, had chosen a different path. But maybe, she realized, you never really walked away from who you used to be. Maybe you just learned to carry it differently. The door opened once more. Agent Marlowe stepped in, holding a different folder this time. She set it on the table in front of Lena and opened it. Inside were photos, surveillance images of the men who'd attacked the hospital, their faces, their identities. We've identified 3 of the 4, Marlowe said. All of them are linked to a private military contractor called Apex Solutions. Ever heard of them? Lena's eyes flicked to the photos. She recognized one of the faces. Not by name, but by reputation. She'd crossed paths with Apex once before, years ago, on a mission in North Africa. They were mercenaries, expensive, efficient, and completely without morals. I've heard of them. They're not the type to give up after one failed attempt, which means Captain Cross is still a target, and so is anyone who got in their way today. Marlowe's eyes met hers. That includes you. Lena closed the folder. What do you want me to do? Right now? Nothing. We're relocating Captain Cross to a secure facility. Full protection. He'll be debriefed once he's stable, and we'll figure out what he knows. In the meantime, you're going to go back to your life, back to the hospital, back to being a nurse. And if they come after me, then we'll be ready. It didn't sound convincing. Lena could hear the uncertainty in Marlowe's voice, the gaps in the plan, but she nodded anyway. Okay. Marlowe stood. One more thing, the hospital staff. They're going to have questions about how you did what you did, about who you are. We'll handle the official story, but you need to keep your head down. No heroics, no drawing attention. Understood. Marlowe left. The MPs returned, escorted Lena back through the corridor, into the elevator, up to the parking garage. They drove her back to the hospital in silence. By the time they arrived, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The hospital looked different now. The emergency vehicles were gone, replaced by a few police cars and a news van parked across the street. The front entrance was cordoned off with yellow tape, but the side doors were open. Staff filtered in and out, faces drawn, exhausted. Lena got out of the SUV. One of the MPs handed her a card with a phone number on it. If you need anything, call this number. Someone will answer. She took the card, nodded, and walked toward the side entrance. Inside, the hospital felt hollow. The usual noise, the beeping monitors, the chatter of nurses, the hum of machinery was muted, subdued. People moved through the hallways like ghosts, speaking in hushed tones. She made her way to the 3rd floor. The ICU was empty now, the isolation room cordoned off with plastic sheeting. Someone had cleaned the blood from the floor, but the bullet holes in the walls remained, dark and accusing. Lena stood in the doorway, staring at the space where she'd fought, where she'd killed. Her hands were clean now. She'd washed them twice since leaving the federal building, but she could still feel the weight of the rifle, the recoil against her shoulder. Voss. She turned. Dr. Calloway stood behind her, his face pale, his usual arrogance stripped away. He looked older somehow, like the day had aged him years. He trailed off, struggling for words. I owe you an apology. She waited. I never thought you were capable of. He gestured vaguely toward the ICU. What you did today? You saved lives. A lot of lives, including mine. Lena nodded once. I was just doing my job. No, you did a hell of a lot more than that. He hesitated. If you need anything, time off, counseling, anything, just ask. I'm fine. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push, just nodded and walked away. Lena stood alone in the hallway, the silence pressing in around her. She thought about going home, crawling into bed, letting sleep take her. But she knew it wouldn't come. Sleep never came easy after days like this. Instead, she walked to the break room, poured herself a cup of coffee from the communal pot, and sat in the corner chair. The same chair she'd sat in that morning a lifetime ago. The TV was still on, still muted. The news was covering the attack, footage of the hospital, interviews with witnesses, speculation about the attacker's motives. Lena watched without sound, her mind elsewhere. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the corner of 5th and Harlow. 1 hour, no signature, no explanation. Lena stared at the message for a long moment. Then she deleted it, finished her coffee, and stood. Outside, the city lights flickered to life, one by one, pushing back the darkness. And somewhere out there, in the shadows between the lights, people were watching, waiting. She left the hospital 20 minutes later, changed into street clothes, jeans, a gray hoodie, sneakers that had seen better days. The night air was cool against her face as she walked toward the parking garage where she kept her car, a 10-year-old sedan that blended into traffic like camouflage. She didn't head home. Home felt exposed now, like a target painted on her back. Instead, she drove. The city unfolded around her in streams of neon and shadow. Raven City after dark was a different animal, louder, sharper, all pretense stripped away. She navigated through downtown, past the financial district where glass towers stood like sentinels, then into the older neighborhoods where brick row houses leaned against each other like tired soldiers. She took random turns, doubled back twice, checked her mirrors constantly. No one followed, but that didn't mean they weren't watching. At a red light, her phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. You deleted my message. Smart, but you should still come. 5th and Harlow, 30 minutes. Her jaw tightened. She typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who knows what you did in Prague." The light turned green. Behind her, a horn blared. She accelerated, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Prague. That was 8 years ago. A mission that officially never happened in a city she'd left in pieces. Only a handful of people knew the details, and most of them were dead. She pulled into an alley 2 blocks from 5th and Harlow, killed the engine, and sat in the darkness. Her mind ran through scenarios: ambush, interrogation, recruitment, elimination. None of them good. But whoever this was, they had information. And information was the only currency that mattered now. She got out of the car and walked. 5th and Harlow was a corner in the warehouse district, the kind of place where streetlights flickered more than they shone, and the only businesses were the kind that didn't put their names on signs. A chain-link fence bordered an empty lot on one side. On the other, a shuttered bodega with bars on the windows. A figure stood beneath the broken streetlight, tall, broad-shouldered, hands in the pockets of a long coat. As Lena approached, the figure turned. It was a man, late 50s, maybe older, with a face carved by time and bad decisions. Scar tissue ran along his left jaw, and his eyes had the flat, assessing quality of someone who'd spent too long looking at the world through a rifle scope. "Voss?" His voice was rough, like gravel in a blender. She stopped 10 feet away. "You have me at a disadvantage. Name's Garrett, Marcus Garrett. We worked together once, briefly." She studied his face, searching her memory. Then it clicked. Khartoum, 6 years ago. 7. But who's counting? He pulled a cigarette from his pocket, lit the pocket, lit it with a worn Zippo. "You pulled my ass out of a firefight when our exfil went sideways, saved my life. You were bleeding out in a stairwell. Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't have." He took a drag, exhaled smoke into the night. "I heard you died. Explosion in Chernivka. Official report, closed casket, the whole 9 yards." Reports can be wrong. Clearly. He flicked ash onto the pavement. "But now you're back, and from what I'm hearing, you made quite the entrance today." Lena's eyes narrowed. "What do you want, Garrett?" "To give you a heads up. Those men who hit the hospital? Apex Solutions. You already know that. But what you don't know is who hired them." "I'm listening." "A man named Dmitry Volkov. Ever heard of him?" The name hit her like cold water. She kept her expression neutral, but inside something shifted. Volkov. Russian intelligence, but not officially. He operated in the gray spaces between governments, brokering deals, moving assets, eliminating problems. She'd crossed paths with him once, years ago, and had made it a point never to do it again. What does Volkov want with a Marine captain? Same thing everyone wants these days. Leverage. Captain Cross saw something in Cordova, evidence of a black market weapons deal involving Russian tech and American buyers. The kind of thing that could start an international incident if it got out. Volkov wants Cross dead before he can talk. "And you're telling me this because?" Garrett dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his boot. "Because Volkov doesn't stop. Today was just round 1. He'll send more people, better people, and he won't care who gets caught in the crossfire." "Oh," he met her eyes. "You put yourself on his radar when you took down his team. Now you're a loose end." I've been a loose end before. Not like this. Volkov plays long games. He'll come at you sideways through people you care about, places you feel safe, and by the time you see it coming, it'll be too late. Lena's hands curled into fists at her sides. Why are you helping me? Because I owe you, and because I don't like the idea of someone like you ending up in a ditch somewhere. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. There's someone inside Harbor Line, someone feeding information to Volkov. That's how they knew about Cross, how they knew when to hit. You need to figure out who before they figure out you're still asking questions. He walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty street. Lena stood there for a long moment, processing. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed the number on the card the MP had given her. It rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered. Yes. This is Lena Voss. I need to speak to Agent Marlowe. Hold. Silence. Then Marlowe's voice, sharper now, alert. Voss. What is it? There's a leak. Someone at the hospital is feeding intel to the people who attacked today. How do you know? Because someone just told me. And before you ask, yes, I trust the source. A pause. We'll look into it. In the meantime, stay put. Don't go back to the hospital until I'm not staying put. If there's a leak, I need to find it before someone else dies. That's not your job. It became my job the second I pulled a trigger today. Lena's voice was cold, flat. You want to stop Volkov? Then let me work. Another pause, longer this time. I'll have a team sweep the hospital staff records, but if you're going back in there, you're doing it under observation. We'll have eyes on you. Fine. The line went dead. Lena lowered the phone and stared at the empty street where Garrett had disappeared. A mole inside Harbor Line. It made sense. The timing of the attack, the precision, the knowledge of Cross's location. Someone had sold them out, and she was going to find out who. By the time she got home, it was past midnight. Her apartment was a 1-bedroom on the 4th floor of a building that had been slated for renovation 3 years ago and still hadn't seen a paintbrush. The hallway smelled like old cooking oil and mildew. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, and locked it behind her. The apartment was sparse. A couch she'd bought secondhand, a table with 1 chair, a kitchenette with a microwave and a coffee maker. No photos on the walls, no personal touches. It was a place to sleep, nothing more. She dropped her bag on the couch and walked to the window. From here, she could see the street below, the glow of the corner bodega, the occasional car drifting past. She scanned for anything unusual, parked vehicles with occupants, shadows in doorways, patterns that didn't fit. Nothing stood out. But that didn't mean they weren't there. She closed the blinds and sat on the couch. Her body ached, not from injury, but from the adrenaline crash. She'd felt this before, the hollow emptiness that came after action, the way time seemed to stretch and contract all at once. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe through it. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unsaved number she recognized. Agent Marlowe. Staff records flagged 3 possibles. We're running background checks. Stay low until we clear them. 3 possibles. That meant 3 people at Harbor Line who had access to Cross's files and enough clearance to know his schedule. 3 people who might have sold him out. Lena opened her laptop, an old model, encrypted 6 ways from Sunday, and logged into a network she wasn't supposed to have access to anymore. It took her 12 minutes to bypass the hospital's firewall and pull up the staff directory. She cross-referenced names with shift schedules, security clearances, access logs. 3 names appeared on her screen. Dr. Richard Calloway, head of trauma surgery, 12 years at Harbor Line. No red flags in his record, but he had the access and the ego to think he was untouchable. Bryn Mitchell, the nurse who'd been assigned to take over Cross's care. 2 years at Harbor Line, clean record, but her financials showed recent deposits that didn't match her salary. And Marcus Reeve, security supervisor. Former military police discharged under unclear circumstances. He controlled access to the ICU, knew every blind spot in the building, and had been conveniently off-duty during the attack. Lena stared at the names. One of them was the leak, maybe more than one. She closed the laptop and leaned back. Her mind churned through possibilities, connections, motives. Calloway had dismissed her that morning, pulled her off Cross's case. Was it because he wanted someone more compliant? Someone who wouldn't ask questions? Bryn's deposits could be explained away. Family help, a side job, gambling wins, but they could also be payments for information. And Reeve had the skills, the access, and the kind of past that made people willing to look the other way. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a call. Unknown number. She answered. Lena Voss? The voice on the other end was smooth, accented, Russian. We haven't been introduced, but I feel like we know each other already. Her blood went cold. Volkov. A soft chuckle. Smart. I like that. It's rare to find someone who connects the dots so quickly. What do you want? To make you an offer. You're a professional. I respect that. You did what you had to do today, and my people paid the price. That's business. But now we have a problem. You're in the way. So send more people. See how that works out. Oh, I will, but I'd rather not. Wasteful, don't you think? All that bloodshed when we could simply come to an arrangement. I'm not interested in arrangements. Not even to save the people around you? His voice dropped, losing the veneer of charm. You have a neighbor, Mrs. Keller, 2 doors down. She brings you soup sometimes, asks if you're eating enough. Sweet woman. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Lena's grip on the phone tightened. Touch her, and I'll burn your entire operation to the ground. There it is. The fire I've heard so much about. Volkov laughed. I'm not threatening her, Lena. I'm illustrating a point. You can't protect everyone. But you can make a choice. Walk away. Forget about Captain Cross. Forget about today. Go back to being a nurse, and I'll forget about you. And if I don't, then everyone you've ever cared about becomes collateral. Starting with your colleagues at Harborline, the doctor who apologized to you today, the one who finally sees you for what you are, I wonder how he'd feel knowing his recognition signed his death warrant. The line went dead. Lena sat in the darkness, her phone still pressed to her ear, her heart pounding. Volkov had just made it personal. He'd drawn a line around everyone in her life and dared her to cross it. She set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. Then she stood, walked to her bedroom, and opened the closet. Behind a stack of folded clothes was a metal lockbox. She pulled it out, entered the combination, and lifted the lid. Inside was everything she'd kept from her old life. A burner phone, 3 passports, all with different names, cash in various currencies, and a Glock 19 cleaned and maintained, sitting in its holster like a sleeping animal. She stared at the gun, hadn't touched it in 3 years, hadn't needed to. Until now. She closed the box, left it on the bed, and walked back to the living room. Her mind was already moving, planning. Volkov had made a mistake. He'd assumed fear would make her compliant, but fear had never worked on her. It just made her sharper. She picked up her phone and sent a message to Agent Marlowe. I need everything you have on Dmitry Volkov. Operations, contacts, financials, everything. The response came within minutes. That's classified. So am I. Send it. A longer pause. Then, I'll see what I can do. Lena set the phone down and paced the small apartment. She thought about Mrs. Keller next door. The woman who'd knocked on her door a week ago with homemade chicken soup, saying she'd made too much and didn't want it to go to waste. Lena had accepted it, said thank you, closed the door. She'd eaten the soup alone, mechanically, and washed the bowl without thinking about the kindness behind it. Now that kindness was a weapon aimed at her, she thought about Calloway, his awkward apology in the ICU hallway, about the nurses who'd gossiped about her that morning, laughing because they thought she didn't matter, about the patients she'd cared for, the ones who never knew her name. Volkov thought he could use them against her. He was wrong. At 2 a.m., she left the apartment again, drove back to the hospital. The night shift was quieter, fewer staff, dimmer lights, the building settling into the rhythm of overnight care. She parked in the employee lot and used her badge to enter through the side door. The corridors were nearly empty. An orderly pushed a cart past her, nodded without recognition. A doctor in wrinkled scrubs stood at a vending machine, feeding it dollar bills. Lena moved through the building like a ghost, heading toward the administrative wing. Security offices were on the second floor, tucked behind a locked door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Lena's badge shouldn't have worked on it, but it did. Someone had upgraded her clearance. Marlowe, probably. Inside, the office was dark except for the glow of multiple monitors showing security feeds. Marcus Reeves sat at the main desk, leaning back in his chair, feet propped up. He was watching a basketball game on his phone. He looked up when she entered. His expression didn't change, but his hand drifted toward the holster on his belt. Voss, didn't expect to see you tonight. Couldn't sleep. Yeah, well, hell of a day. He set his phone down. You need something? Access logs. I want to see who entered the ICU in the 6 hours before the attack. His eyes narrowed. That's restricted. So is my security clearance, apparently. But here I am. He studied her for a long moment. Then he shrugged, turned to his computer, and pulled up the logs. Knock yourself out. She moved beside him, scanning the screen. The list was long. Doctors, nurses, orderlies, maintenance staff. But 3 entries stood out. 2 from Bryn Mitchell, both within an hour of each other, and 1 from Calloway, 30 minutes before the attack began. Can you pull video from the ICU hallway? Same time frame? Reeve hesitated. You investigating something? Just curious. Curiosity's dangerous in this place. But he pulled up the video anyway. The footage was grainy, black and white. Lena watched as Bryn entered the ICU, spent 4 minutes inside, then left. Normal. But the second time she entered, she spent less than 90 seconds inside and came out holding something small, too small to identify on camera. Then Calloway appeared. He stood outside the isolation room, spoke briefly to one of the guards, then walked away. Nothing unusual, except for the fact that he'd come to the ICU at all. Trauma surgeons didn't make social calls to ICU patients. They had residents for that. What's this about? Reeve asked, his voice quieter now. How long have you been security supervisor here? 4 years. Why? You know everyone who works here, their routines, their habits. Part of the job. Bryn Mitchell. What do you know about her? Reeve leaned back in his chair. Young, eager, decent nurse from what I hear. Why? You think she's involved? I think someone fed information to the people who attacked today, and I think it was someone with access to Cross's room. His expression hardened. You accusing me? Should I be? For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Reeve stood, his hand still near his holster. I was off duty when it happened. Home. Alone. No alibi except my word. So yeah, I guess I'm a suspect, but if you think I'd sell out my own facility, I don't know what to think. That's why I'm asking. He stared at her. Then, slowly, he sat back down. Bryn's been weird lately. Jumpy. I noticed it about 2 weeks ago. Thought maybe she had personal stuff going on. But now... He pulled up another file on his computer. Her badge was used to access the medication storage room last night. At 3 a.m. That's not on her shift schedule. What was she doing there? No idea. But medication storage has computers. Networked computers. Lena's pulse quickened. Can you see what she accessed? Reeve's fingers moved across the keyboard. A new window opened. Server logs, file access records. And there it was. At 3:07 a.m., someone using Bryn's credentials had pulled Captain Cross's medical file. The full file, not the redacted version. Son of a bitch, Reeve muttered. Lena pulled out her phone and took a photo of the screen. Where is she now? Home, probably. Her shift doesn't start until 7. I need her address. Reeve looked at her. What are you going to do? Talk to her? That's what the feds are for. The feds don't know what I know. He hesitated, then wrote an address on a post-it note and handed it to her. If this goes sideways, I never gave you that. Understood. She turned to leave. Reeve called after her. Voss, be careful. If she's working for who I think she's working for, she's not going to just confess because you ask nicely. Lena didn't answer, just walked out. Bryn Mitchell lived in a modest apartment complex on the south side of Raven City, the kind of place with numbered buildings and parking spaces marked by fading paint. Lena parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot. It was nearly 3 a.m. now, the world quiet except for the distant hum of the interstate. Building C, 3rd floor. Apartment 314. Lena stood outside the door, listening. No sounds from within. She tested the knob. Locked. She pulled a small tool from her pocket, a tension wrench and pick she kept for emergencies, and worked the lock. It took 40 seconds. The door opened silently. Inside, the apartment was dark. Lena stepped in, closed the door behind her, and waited for her eyes to adjust. The living room was small, cluttered, clothes draped over the couch. Takeout containers on the coffee table. A laptop sat open on the dining table, screen dark. Lena moved through the space carefully. Checked the bedroom. Empty. The bed was made, but there was a suitcase on the floor, half packed. She was running. Lena returned to the living room and opened the laptop. It woke immediately. No password. Sloppy. The screen showed an email client, the last message still open. Final payment transferred. Leave tonight. Do not contact us again. The sender's address was a string of random characters, untraceable, but the message was clear. Bryn had sold out Cross, taken the money, and was disappearing. Lena heard it then, a sound from the hallway. Footsteps. Fast. She turned just as the apartment door burst open. Bryn stood in the doorway, keys in one hand, a gun in the other. Her eyes went wide when she saw Lena. "What the hell are you doing here?" Lena raised her hand slowly. "We need to talk." "Get out. Now." "You sold him out, Captain Cross. You gave them his location, his schedule. People died because of you." Bryn's hand shook, the gun wavering. "You don't understand. They threatened me. Said they'd kill my sister if I didn't." "So you let them kill everyone else instead?" "I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice." Bryn's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but the gun stayed raised. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted people to die? I was trying to protect someone I love. And now Volkov's going to kill you anyway. You know too much. He said he'd leave me alone if I... He lied." The words hung in the air. Bryn's breathing was ragged, her whole body trembling. "What do I do?" "Put the gun down. Come with me. We'll get you into protective custody, and you'll tell them everything." "They'll put me in prison." "Better than a grave." For a moment it seemed like Bryn might lower the weapon. Her arm dipped slightly, her resolve cracking. Then the window behind her exploded. Glass shattered inward. Bryn jerked, her body twisting, and she fell. Blood spread across her chest, dark and wet. Lena dropped to the floor as a second shot punched through the wall where her head had been. She crawled toward Bryn, checked for a pulse. Faint. Fading. "Stay with me," Lena said, pressing her hand against the wound. But Bryn's eyes were already glazing over. "I'm sorry," Bryn whispered. "I'm so—" Her head lolled to the side. Gone. Lena's jaw clenched. She grabbed the laptop from the table, shoved it under her arm, and ran for the door. Another shot tore through the apartment, splintering the door frame. She hit the hallway at a sprint, took the stairs 3 at a time, burst out into the parking lot. A car screeched to a stop in front of her. Black sedan, tinted windows. The passenger door flew open, and Agent Marlowe leaned out. "Get in." Lena didn't hesitate. She dove into the back seat as the driver, an agent she didn't recognize, floored it. The car fishtailed out of the lot and onto the street. Behind them, muzzle flashes lit up the night. Bullets sparked off the pavement. Marlowe returned fire through the back window, her shots precise and controlled. "Down!" she shouted. Lena flattened herself across the seat. The car swerved hard, tires screaming, another volley of gunfire, then silence. They were clear. Marlowe slumped back in her seat, breathing hard. "What the hell were you thinking, going in there alone?" "I was thinking I'd get answers before she ran." "Well, congratulations. Now she's dead and Volkov knows you're onto him." "He already knew." Lena sat up, clutching the laptop. "But I got this." Marlowe glanced at it. "What is it?" "Everything Bryn knew. Emails, contacts, payment records. If we're lucky, it'll lead us straight to Volkov's network." The car pulled onto the interstate, merging into sparse late-night traffic. Marlowe stared out the window, her jaw tight. This just became a war. Lena said nothing, just held the laptop and stared at the city lights bleeding past. Somewhere out there Volkov was watching, waiting, and the next move was his. The car didn't stop until they reached a federal building on the industrial edge of Raven City, a concrete block with narrow windows and enough razor wire on the roof to slice the sky. Marlowe led Lena through a side entrance that required 3 separate badge scans and a retinal verification. They descended 2 flights of stairs into a subterranean operations center. Rows of workstations, wall-mounted screens displaying real-time intel feeds, agents moving with the hushed urgency of people who knew the clock was always ticking. Marlowe gestured to a small conference room off the main floor. In here. Lena sat. Marlowe took the laptop, handed it to a tech specialist who disappeared into the maze of desks. Then she sat across from Lena, arms folded. Bryn Mitchell is dead. Sniper, probably staged on the building across the street. Professional hit. Clean. I know. You almost got yourself killed. I know that too. Marlowe's eyes were hard. This isn't a game, Voss. Volkov doesn't send warnings. He sends body bags. The fact that you're still breathing means he wants you alive for something. And that scares me more than if he just wanted you dead. Lena met her gaze without flinching. Then let's figure out what he wants before he gets it. The tech returned 20 minutes later with a printout. Marlowe scanned it, her expression darkening with every line. She slid the paper across the table. Bryn's emails trace back to a shell company in Cyprus. But the payment routing goes through 4 different offshore accounts before it dead ends. Volkov's good at covering his tracks. What about the other names, Calloway and Reeve? Calloway's clean. We ran his financials, his communications, everything. He's just an arrogant surgeon with a superiority complex. Reeve's harder to read. His discharge from the MPs was murky, but we can't find anything that ties him to Volkov. So Bryn was the only leak? Maybe. Or maybe she was just the one who got caught. Marlowe leaned forward. We pulled everything off that laptop. One file stands out. A video call transcript from 2 nights ago. Bryn and someone she called V. We're assuming that's Volkov. What did they talk about? Cross, his transport schedule, the security protocols, and something else. Marlowe hesitated. She mentioned you, specifically. Lena's stomach tightened. What did she say? That there was a nurse who'd been reassigned off Cross's case, someone quiet, forgettable. Volkov asked for a name. Bryn gave it to him. The room seemed to shrink. Lena's hands pressed flat against the table. So he knew who I was before the attack. We think so, which means the hit on the hospital wasn't just about Cross. It was about flushing you out. Lena closed her eyes. Pieces were falling into place now, sharp and ugly. Volkov hadn't just wanted Cross. He'd wanted to see what would happen when his team encountered resistance, to see who would step up. And when Lena had, he'd gotten exactly what he needed, confirmation that Spectre 1 was alive. He's been watching me for weeks, she said quietly. Maybe longer. Jam, probably since you started working at Harbor Line. He's patient, methodical. He would have taken his time, built a profile, waited for the right moment. And now he has it. Marlowe didn't argue. She just looked tired. We're moving Captain Cross to a black site. Maximum security. No one outside this room knows the location. He'll be debriefed there, and once we extract everything he knows about Cordova, we'll relocate him under a new identity. And me? You're staying here. Protective custody. We'll set you up in a safe house. No. Marlowe's jaw tightened. This isn't optional. I'm not hiding. Volkov made this personal. He threatened people I know. He killed Bryn to send a message. If I disappear, he'll just escalate. More bodies, more collateral. I'm not giving him that. Then what do you suggest? Lena leaned back in her chair. I go back to the hospital. Business as usual. Let him think I'm vulnerable. And when he makes his next move, we're ready. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to finish this. Marlowe stared at her for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to the door, and locked it. When she turned back, her expression had shifted. Less federal agent, more soldier. If we do this, it's off book. No official oversight. No backup unless I authorize it. And if it goes sideways, I can't protect you. I'm not asking you to. You understand what you're walking into? Volkov doesn't play fair. He'll come at you with everything he has. Good. Let him. Marlowe exhaled slowly. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most reckless. Probably both. A faint smile touched Marlowe's lips. Then it was gone. We'll wire the hospital. Cameras, audio, the works. You'll wear a tracker at all times. And I'm assigning a 2-man team to shadow you. Discreet, but close. First sign of trouble, they move in. Agreed. One more thing. We need Cross awake. We need to know what he saw in Cordova, and we need it before Volkov tries again. The doctors say he'll be coherent in the next 12 to 24 hours. When he wakes up, I want you there. He trusts medical staff more than he'll trust suits like me. Lena nodded. I'll be ready. She left the federal building just before dawn. The city was waking up, delivery trucks rumbling through empty streets, early commuters shuffling toward bus stops, the smell of coffee and exhaust mixing in the cold air. Marlowe's team had given her a new phone, a panic button disguised as a keychain, and a small earpiece that she could activate with a double tap on her watch. She drove to her apartment, showered, changed into clean scrubs, stared at herself in the mirror. The bruise on her shoulder from yesterday's firefight was turning purple. Her eyes were bloodshot. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in a week. Good. That would sell the illusion. At 6 a.m., she clocked into Harborline. The hospital felt different now, tighter, more tense. Security had been doubled. Every entrance had armed guards. Staff moved through the halls with wary eyes. Conversations hushed. Lena made her way to the third floor. The nurses' station was quieter than usual. A few familiar faces, but no one met her eyes. Word had spread about what she'd done during the attack, and now people didn't know how to act around her. She was no longer invisible. Dr. Calloway was at the station, reviewing charts. He glanced up when she approached. Voss, glad you're back. Thank you. He set down the chart. Look, I know things have been complicated, but I want you to know I respect what you did. You saved lives, mine included. She nodded once. Just doing my job. It was more than that. He hesitated. I also wanted to apologize for how I treated you before. I underestimated you. Won't happen again. Appreciated. He walked away. Lena stood at the station, scanning the schedule board. Her name was listed under ICU rotations. Someone had reassigned her to Captain Cross's care. She headed toward the ICU. The isolation room had been moved to a different wing, one with restricted access and reinforced doors. 2 guards stood outside, both of them alert, hands resting on sidearms. One of them checked her badge. Nurse Voss? That's right. You're cleared. He's still sedated, but the doc says he might wake up in the next few hours. She entered the room. Cross lay in the bed, tubes running from his arms, monitors beeping softly. His face was pale, beard growing and patchy, a surgical scar visible along his collarbone. She checked his vitals, adjusted the IV drip, made notes in his chart. Then she sat in the chair beside the bed and waited. An hour passed. Then 2. She read through his medical file, the parts that weren't redacted at least. Multiple surgeries, shrapnel removed from his chest and abdomen, significant blood loss. He'd been lucky to survive. At 9:30, his eyes fluttered. Lena stood leaning over the bed. Captain Cross? Can you hear me? His eyes opened slowly. Unfocused at first, then sharpening. He looked at her, then around the room, confusion giving way to recognition. Where? Harborline Medical Center, Raven City. You've been here 3 days. He tried to sit up. She pressed a hand gently to his shoulder. Easy. You've had major surgery. Don't tear the stitches. He settled back, breathing hard. My team. I'm sorry. You were the only survivor. His face crumpled. He turned his head away, and for a moment Lena thought he might cry. But he just closed his eyes, jaw clenched. Captain, I need to ask you some questions about what happened in Cordova. His eyes snapped open. Who are you? My name is Lena. I'm a nurse here. But I'm also working with federal agents who are trying to protect you. Protect me from what? The people who want you dead. The ones who attacked this hospital 2 days ago trying to get to you. He stared at her. They came here? They did. And they'll come again if we don't stop them. But we need to know what you saw. What you know. Cross's hands curled into fists. I can't. It's classified. I can't just... Classified doesn't matter if you're dead. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he exhaled, the fight draining out of him. We were running recon in the Cordova Highlands, checking supply routes, mapping insurgent activity, standard stuff. But one night we picked up chatter about a shipment, a big one. We set up overwatch on a compound near the border. What kind of shipment? Weapons, advanced stuff, surface-to-air missiles, encrypted communication systems, tech that shouldn't be in that region. We watched the handoff, Russian contractors on one side, Americans on the other. Lena's pulse quickened. Americans? Military? Private contractors. But they had U.S. government credentials. I got photos, serial numbers, faces, sent them up the chain before we were ambushed. Who ambushed you? I don't know. They hit us fast. Killed everyone but me. I barely made it out. His voice cracked. I should have died with them. But you didn't. And now those photos are the only evidence of what happened. Where are they? Uploaded to a secure server. But I also kept a backup. On a drive. He hesitated. It's in my personal effects. They would have brought those here, right? Lena nodded slowly. They should be in storage. I can check. Don't trust anyone with this. Those people, whoever they are, they have reach. They got to my team. They got to this hospital. They'll get to you if you're not careful. I'll be careful. She left the room, her mind racing. A flash drive with evidence of illegal weapons trafficking involving U.S. and Russian actors. That was what Volkov wanted. Not just Cross's silence, the proof, the leverage. She found a hospital administrator, asked about Cross's personal effects. The woman checked her computer, frowned. They were logged when he was admitted, but it says they were transferred to federal custody yesterday. Lena's stomach dropped. By who? Agent Marlowe. DOD Intelligence. She thanked the woman and walked away, pulling out her phone. Dialed Marlowe. Voss? What is it? You have Cross's personal effects? Yes. Why? There's a flash drive in there. Evidence from Cordova. We need it secured. A pause. We already checked his belongings. There was no flash drive. Lena stopped walking. What? Wallet, dog tags, a wedding ring. That's it. No electronics. He said he kept a backup. It should have been with him. Then someone took it before it got to us. Lena's mind spun. Who had access to his belongings between the field hospital and here? Dozens of people. Medics, transport crews, intake staff. Could have been anyone. Or it could still be here. Hidden. Where? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. She ended the call and headed back toward the ICU. But before she reached it, her earpiece crackled. Marlowe's voice, sharp and urgent. Voss, we have a problem. Security feed just picked up 2 unidentified individuals entering the hospital through the service entrance. They're armed. Lena's hand went to the panic button on her keychain. Where are they now? 2nd floor, heading toward the east stairwell. That puts them on a direct path to the ICU. I'm going to cross. Negative. Fall back. Let my team handle it. Your team isn't here yet. She broke into a run. The hallway blurred around her. She hit the stairwell, took the steps 2 at a time, her breath coming fast. Her earpiece crackled again. Targets on 3rd floor. They know where they're going. Lena burst through the stairwell door onto the 3rd floor. Ahead, the 2 guards outside Cross's room were turning, hands going to their weapons. Too slow. 2 shots. Both guards dropped. Lena saw them then. 2 men, tactical gear, suppressors on their weapons. One of them kicked open the door to Cross's room. The other turned, saw Lena, and raised his gun. She dove sideways as the shot tore through the air where her head had been. Rolled, came up behind a supply cart, and shoved it hard. It careened down the hallway, metal clattering. The gunman sidestepped it, adjusted his aim. Lena didn't give him the chance. She sprinted at him, closing the distance before he could fire again. Her hand shot out, grabbed the barrel of the suppressor, twisted it upward. The gun went off, the shot punching into the ceiling. She drove her knee into his ribs, felt something crack, then wrenched the weapon from his grip and slammed the butt into his jaw. He went down hard. The second gunman emerged from Cross's room, dragging the captain by the IV line. Cross was barely conscious, stumbling, blood seeping through his bandages. "Let him go!" Lena shouted. The gunman raised his weapon, not at her, at Cross's head. "Drop the gun or he dies." Lena froze. The hallway was a tableau of held breath and drawn steel. Behind her she heard footsteps, Marlowe's team, finally arriving. But they were too far away. The gunman's finger tightened on the trigger. And then Cross moved. Despite the pain, despite the sedative still in his system, he drove his elbow into the gunman's throat. The man staggered, choking. Lena fired. One shot, center mass. The gunman dropped. Cross collapsed. Lena caught him, lowered him to the floor. Blood was spreading across his gown. I got you, she said. Stay with me. Marlowe's team swarmed the hallway, securing the area, checking the bodies. Marlowe knelt beside Lena, her face grim. Is he alive? Barely. We need a crash cart. Now. Doctors arrived, a flurry of movement and shouted orders. They loaded Cross onto a gurney, wheeled him toward surgery. Lena stood, her hands covered in blood, watching them disappear around the corner. Marlowe touched her arm. You okay? No. Good, because we've got a bigger problem. She gestured to one of the bodies. We ran facial recognition. These aren't Volkov's usual contractors. They're ex-Spetsnaz, Russian special forces. Volkov's escalating. He's desperate, which means we're close to something he can't afford to lose. The flash drive. It has to still be here. Cross wouldn't have risked sending it up the chain without a backup close by. Marlowe nodded slowly. Then we tear this place apart until we find it. They started with Cross's room, stripped the bed, checked under the mattress, behind the monitors. Nothing. Lena moved to the adjacent supply closet, pulling out drawers, inspecting every corner. Where would he hide it? Marlowe muttered. Lena paused, thought back to her own training. When you needed to hide something in hostile territory, you didn't put it somewhere clever. You put it somewhere expected, somewhere no one would look twice. Her eyes fell on the IV stand. She walked over, ran her hand along the metal pole, felt a seam, pressed. A small panel popped open near the base. Inside, wrapped in medical tape, was a thumb-sized flash drive. She held it up. Marlowe's eyes widened. Son of a bitch. Lena pocketed the drive. We need to get this analyzed. Now. They moved fast, back through the hospital, down to the parking garage. Marlowe's SUV was waiting, engine running. They climbed in, and the driver pulled out onto the street. Lena glanced at the side mirror. A black sedan was following them. We've got a tail. Marlowe looked back. How many? One car. 2 occupants. Lose them. The driver accelerated, weaving through traffic. The sedan kept pace. They took a hard right, tires squealing. The sedan followed. Another turn, still there. Marlowe pulled her sidearm. They're not backing off. The sedan surged forward, ramming them from behind. The SUV lurched. Lena braced against the seat. Another hit. The driver cursed, fought the wheel. Hold on! They shot through an intersection, barely missing a delivery truck. The sedan stayed close. Too close. The passenger window rolled down, and a figure leaned out, weapon raised. Marlowe fired first. Her shot spiderwebbed the sedan's windshield. The car swerved, but didn't slow. Return fire. Bullets punched through the SUV's back window. Lena ducked, glass raining over her. Marlowe fired again, and this time the sedan's front tire exploded. The car spun out, crashed into a parked van. The SUV didn't stop. They kept going, cutting through side streets, putting distance between them and the wreck. By the time they reached the federal building, Lena's hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists, willing the adrenaline to drain. Inside, they handed the flash drive to the tech team. It took them 40 minutes to decrypt it. When they finally pulled up the files, the room went silent. Photos. Dozens of them. High-resolution images of a nighttime weapons transfer. Crates marked with Cyrillic lettering. Faces. Russian contractors she didn't recognize. And Americans. Men in civilian clothes with government IDs visible on their belts. One face stood out. Lena knew him. Senator Kirkland. Decorated war hero. Chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Jesus, Marlowe breathed. Lena stared at the screen. This is why Volkov wants Cross dead. This proves U.S. officials are involved in illegal arms deals. It's not just illegal, it's treason. The tech pulled up more files, financial records, wire transfers, shell companies. A paper trail that led straight to some of the most powerful people in Washington. Marlowe's phone rang. She answered, listened, her face going pale. She hung up. That was the hospital. Cross didn't make it. He died in surgery 10 minutes ago. Lena's chest tightened. No. He lost too much blood. They couldn't save him. The room felt smaller. Lena turned away, staring at nothing. Cross had survived an ambush, an explosion, days of surgery. And now he was gone. Because of a flash drive. Because of secrets. Volkov's cleaning house, Marlowe said quietly. Everyone who knows about this is a target, including us. Lena turned back. Then we go public. Release the files. Let the world see what's on that drive. We can't. Half the people implicated have the power to bury this. They'll claim it's fabricated, discredit the source, and we'll end up dead or in prison. So what do we do? Marlowe looked at her. We go after Volkov directly, cut off the head. You know where he is? We've been tracking financial transactions tied to the Apex contracts. One of them traces to a property outside the city, industrial complex, abandoned supposedly, but satellite imaging shows recent activity. You think he's there? I think it's our best shot. Lena felt the weight of the moment settling over her. This was it, the endgame. No more waiting, no more bait. When do we move? Tonight, we hit him before he knows we have the drive. Marlowe paused. You don't have to come. This isn't your fight anymore. Lena met her eyes. Yes, it is. They prepped for 6 hours. Marlowe assembled a tactical team, 8 agents, all veterans, all volunteers. They ran through schematics of the industrial complex, identified entry points, escape routes, potential ambush zones. Lena was issued body armor, a sidearm, and a radio. As the sun set, they loaded into 2 unmarked vans and headed east out of Raven City. The industrial complex was 30 miles outside the city limits, a sprawling cluster of warehouses and processing plants that had been shuttered for a decade. Rusted metal, broken windows, the kind of place where things went to die. They parked a mile out and approached on foot. The night was cold, the moon hidden behind clouds. Lena moved with the team, her breath visible in the frigid air. Ahead, the complex loomed like a corpse. Marlowe signaled. The team split, 4 to the west entrance, 4 to the east. Lena stayed with Marlowe's group. They reached the east gate. Bolt cutters made quick work of the chain. They slipped inside, moving through shadows, weapons raised. The complex was silent, too silent. Marlowe's radio crackled. West team in position, no contact. They advanced toward the main warehouse. The doors were ajar. Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. They entered. Inside the warehouse was vast and empty. Rows of rusted machinery, puddles of stagnant water, and in the center, a single light. Beneath it stood Dmitry Volkov. He was older than Lena expected, mid-60s, silver hair, dressed in an expensive suit that looked absurd in the decayed space. He wasn't alone. 6 men flanked him, all armed. Agent Marlowe, Volkov said, his voice smooth. Inspector 1. What a reunion. Marlowe raised her weapon. Dmitry Volkov, you're under arrest. Volkov smiled. I don't think so. The lights went out. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness in staccato bursts. Lena dropped, rolled behind a piece of machinery. Bullets sparked off metal around her. She returned fire, aiming at the flashes. Someone screamed. One of Marlowe's agents went down. Lena moved, staying low, circling toward Volkov's position. More gunfire. Another agent fell. The west team was pinned at the entrance. Then she saw him, Volkov, slipping toward a side exit. She broke cover, sprinting after him. Shots followed her, tearing through the air. She didn't stop. She hit the exit just as Volkov disappeared through it, followed him into a narrow corridor. He was fast for his age, but she was faster. She tackled him from behind. They hit the ground hard. He twisted, drove an elbow into her ribs. Pain exploded, but she held on. They grappled, rolling across the concrete. He was stronger than he looked. His hand found her throat, squeezed, her vision blurred. She drove her knee into his stomach. He gasped, grip loosening. She broke free, grabbed her sidearm, and pressed it to his forehead. Don't move. He laughed. Blood trickled from his lip. You think this ends with me? You think killing me stops anything? I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done. They already know. They just don't care. Behind her, footsteps. Marlowe appeared, weapon raised. Voss, step back. Lena didn't move. He orchestrated everything. The attack on the hospital, Bryn's death, Cross. I know, and he's going to answer for it. But not like this. Lena's hand trembled. She wanted to pull the trigger, wanted to end it here. But she lowered the gun. Marlowe cuffed Volkov, dragged him to his feet. Dmitry Volkov, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and treason. He smiled. You'll never make it stick. We'll see. They hauled him out of the warehouse. The rest of his men were in custody, the warehouse secured. But as they loaded Volkov into the van, Lena saw it. A black helicopter descending fast from the north. Marlowe saw it too. Get down! The helicopter opened fire. Bullets tore through the vans, the ground, everything. Agents scattered. Lena dove behind a concrete barrier. The helicopter circled, relentless. And then Volkov was gone. Someone had cut him loose in the chaos. He was running toward the helicopter, which had landed 50 yards away. Lena sprinted after him. Marlowe shouted something, but she couldn't hear over the rotor wash. Volkov reached the helicopter, climbed inside. Lena raised her weapon, fired. The shot hit the helicopter's tail. Sparks flew, but it lifted off anyway. She watched it disappear into the night sky. Gone. Marlowe grabbed her shoulder. We need to go, now. That chopper probably called in reinforcements. They piled into the remaining van and fled. Behind them, the industrial complex burned. By the time they reached the city, dawn was breaking. Lena sat in the back of the van, covered in grime and blood that wasn't hers. Marlowe sat beside her, face grim. He got away. Yeah. We still have the flash drive, the evidence. Evidence doesn't matter if the people it implicates can make it disappear. Marlowe didn't argue. When they reached the federal building, a dozen black SUVs were waiting. Men in suits, not agents, something else, stood by the entrance. Marlowe's face went pale. Internal affairs, someone tipped them off. One of the suits approached. Agent Marlowe, you're being placed on administrative leave pending investigation into unauthorized operations. On whose authority? Senator Kirkland. Lena's blood ran cold. The man in the photos. He was already moving to bury this. Marlowe was escorted inside. Lena stood alone in the parking lot watching the sun rise over Raven City. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Volkov's voice. You cost me a lot tonight, Spectre, but I'll give you credit. You're persistent. Where are you? Somewhere you'll never find me, but don't worry. We'll see each other again, soon. The line went dead. Lena stared at the phone. Around her, the city woke up, oblivious to the war being fought in its shadows. And somewhere out there, Volkov was planning his next move. She stood in that parking lot for 3 minutes after Volkov's call ended, watching federal vehicles pull away one by one. The morning light felt wrong, too clean, too ordinary for what had just happened. Marlowe was inside being interrogated by people who answered to the same senator whose face was on that flash drive. The math wasn't hard. Lena pocketed her phone and walked. Not to her car, not to anywhere specific, just away. She needed to think, and thinking required distance from the machinery grinding behind those federal building walls. 2 blocks east, she found a diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since yesterday. She sat in the back corner, ordered black coffee and toast she wouldn't eat, and pulled out the burner phone she'd kept from her old life. It still worked. She dialed a number she hadn't called in 4 years. 3 rings. Then a voice, rough and suspicious. Yeah. It's Voss. A long pause. You're supposed to be dead. Turns out I'm not. What do you want? Information, off the record, about Senator Kirkland. The voice on the other end belonged to Raymond Torres, a journalist who'd made his career exposing corruption in places most people were too afraid to look. He'd almost been killed twice, had his house burned down once, and still kept digging. Kirkland's untouchable, Torres said. Committee chairman, war hero. The guy's got connections from the Pentagon to Silicon Valley. What if I told you I have proof he's involved in illegal arms trafficking? Silence. Then, what kind of proof? Photos, financial records, a direct link to a Russian operative named Dmitry Volkov. Where'd you get this? A Marine captain who died because of it. Another pause. You understand what you're asking me to do? Kirkland has the resources to bury me. And you. He's already trying, which means we're out of time. You want the story or not? She could hear him breathing, weighing it. Where are you? Raven City, but I can't meet you anywhere public. They're watching. There's an old parking garage on Westfield and 9th, top level, 2 hours. I'll be there. She hung up, drank her coffee, left cash on the table, and walked out. The next 90 minutes were spent preparing. She went to a storage unit she rented under a fake name, one of 3 she kept scattered across the city. Inside was a metal case containing everything she'd need if the world came apart. Fake IDs, cash in multiple currencies, a second weapon, and a portable hard drive with encrypted backups of every mission file she'd ever kept. Insurance. She copied the files from Cross's flash drive onto the hard drive, then made 2 additional copies onto separate thumb drives. One she taped inside the lining of her jacket. The other she sealed in a waterproof bag and buried in a flower pot outside the storage unit. Redundancy. The first rule of surviving people who wanted you erased. By the time she reached the parking garage on Westfield, the sun was high and harsh. She drove to the top level, parked facing the exit ramp, and waited. The garage was empty except for a few abandoned cars and the smell of old piss. 10 minutes later, a battered sedan pulled up. Torres got out. He was in his 50s, gray stubble, eyes that had seen too much. He walked over, slid into her passenger seat without asking. "You look like hell," he said. "Thanks. Show me what you've got." She handed him one of the thumb drives. He plugged it into a laptop he'd brought, scanned through the files. His expression didn't change, but she saw the way his jaw tightened. Jesus, this is massive. Can you run it? If I run this, I'm declaring war on some very powerful people. They declared war first. I'm just asking you to fire back. Torres stared at the screen, then at her. What happened to you? Last I heard, you disappeared after Prague. I retired, tried to anyway. It didn't stick. He laughed, bitter. It never does. He ejected the drive, pocketed it. I'll need 48 hours to verify sources, build corroboration, and get this to editors who won't fold under pressure. Can you stay alive that long? I've managed so far. Stay smart. Kirkland's going to know something's coming. He'll move to contain it. Let him try. Torres opened the door, paused. Why now? Why risk everything for this? Lena looked through the windshield at the city sprawling below. Because people died, and the people who killed them are walking around like it didn't matter. That ends. He nodded. 48 hours, stay off the grid. He left. Lena sat alone in the car, listening to the wind whistle through the concrete levels below. Her phone buzzed. Not the burner. Her regular phone. A text from an unknown number. You think you can expose us? You're a ghost, no credentials, no standing, just a dead operative playing hero. No one will believe you. She deleted it, started the car, drove. But she didn't go into hiding. She went back to Harborline. The hospital felt different now, quieter. The increased security had settled into routine, guards standing at their posts with the glazed expression of people who'd stopped expecting trouble. Lena clocked in, changed into scrubs, and reported to the third-floor station. Dr. Calloway was there, reviewing a surgical schedule. He looked up when she approached. Voss, I thought they'd pulled you off rotation. Temporary leave, I'm back now. He studied her face. You sure you're ready? After everything that happened? I'm fine. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. We're short-staffed in post-op. Could use your help. She spent the next 6 hours doing what she'd done for 3 years, changing dressings, monitoring vitals, administering medication. The work was mechanical, grounding. It reminded her why she'd chosen this life. Saving people was simpler than killing them, cleaner, but between patients, her mind churned. Volkov was out there. Kirkland was mobilizing his defenses. Marlowe was locked in an interrogation room, and somewhere a clock was ticking. At 4 p.m., her phone buzzed. A call from the federal building. She stepped into an empty break room and answered. Voss? It was Marlowe's voice, strained. Are you okay? Suspended pending investigation. They confiscated my files, my access, everything. Internal Affairs is treating this like I went rogue. Kirkland's reach? Obviously. But here's the thing. They're asking about you. Specifically. They know you were at the warehouse. They know about the flash drive. Lena's grip tightened on the phone. How? Someone talked. One of my team, maybe. Or they've got surveillance I didn't know about. Either way, they're building a case that you're a foreign operative working with Volkov. That the whole hospital attack was staged to make you look like a hero. That's insane. It's effective. They're painting you as the villain and Kirkland as the victim. And without me backing you up, they might make it stick. Lena exhaled slowly. What do you need me to do? Disappear. Get out of Raven City. I'll try to buy you time, but if they issue a warrant, I'm not running. Voss, I have a plan. Trust me. That's what I'm afraid of. Lena ended the call, stood there in the break room staring at the wall. They were trying to erase her again, turn her into a ghost, a scapegoat, a convenient narrative. But ghosts had one advantage. They could move unseen. She left the hospital at the end of her shift, drove to a motel on the edge of the city, paid cash for a room under a fake name. Inside, she set up her laptop, connected through a VPN, and started digging. Kirkland's financial records were buried behind layers of shell corporations and offshore accounts, but Cross's files had given her a thread. She pulled it, followed wire transfers from a holding company in the Caymans to a defense contractor in Virginia, from there to a numbered account in Switzerland, and finally to a name she recognized, Marcus Reeve, the security supervisor at Harborline, the man who'd helped her access the hospital's surveillance footage, the man whose discharge from the military police had been murky. He'd been on Kirkland's payroll for 6 years. Lena sat back, her mind racing. Reeve hadn't been the leak, Bryn had, but he'd been the handler, the one who made sure information flowed where Kirkland needed it. And when Bryn had become a liability, he'd probably been the one to authorize the hit. She grabbed her phone, dialed Marlowe's number. I know who's working for Kirkland inside Harborline. Marcus Reeve, security supervisor. You sure? Financial trail leads straight to him. He's been on Kirkland's payroll since before the attack. Marlowe swore. If Reeve's dirty, he's had access to every security protocol in that building. He probably fed Volkov the layout. Which means he knows we're on to him. We need to move now. I'm suspended. I can't authorize an arrest. Then I'll do it myself. Voss, she hung up, grabbed her jacket, left the motel. Harborline was quiet when she arrived. Night shift had started, the hallways dim and nearly empty. She took the stairs to the second floor, headed for the security office. Through the window, she could see Reeve at his desk, leaning back in his chair, scrolling through his phone. She opened the door. He looked up, surprised. Voss, what are you doing here? We need to talk. He set his phone down, eyes narrowing. About what? She closed the door behind her. About the money you've been taking from Senator Kirkland. His expression didn't change, but she saw the shift, the way his hand drifted toward the drawer where he kept his sidearm. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You've been feeding information to Volkov through Bryn. Schedules, security protocols, everything he needed to hit Cross. And when Bryn became a problem, you made sure she didn't talk. Reeve's hand was on the drawer now. You're reaching. Am I? Because I have financial records that say otherwise. Wire transfers, dates, amounts, all of it traceable back to you. He pulled the gun, didn't aim it yet, just held it on the desk. You should have stayed retired. Probably, but here we are. You think you can prove any of this? I'll deny it. My lawyers will bury you in motions before you even get to trial. I'm not taking you to trial. His eyes flicked to her hands. She wasn't armed, or didn't appear to be, but she was close enough that it wouldn't matter. So what, you're going to kill me? That's not your style anymore, is it? You're a nurse now. You save lives. Most of the time. He raised the gun. She moved. Her hand shot across the desk, grabbed his wrist, twisted it sideways. The gun went off, the shot punching into the wall. She yanked him forward, drove her elbow into his face. He staggered back, blood streaming from his nose. She kicked the gun away, grabbed him by the collar, and slammed him into the filing cabinet. Where's Volkov? I don't know. She slammed him again. Where? I swear I don't know. He never told me. I just passed information. That's it. Who else is working for Kirkland? I don't... She pulled the scalpel from her pocket, pressed it to his throat. Last chance. His eyes widened. There's a deputy director in the FBI. I don't know his name. Kirkland calls him the Sentinel. He's the one who buried the investigation into Cross's team. Lena's mind spun. A mole inside the FBI. That explained how Kirkland had moved so fast to contain Marlowe. How do I find him? I don't know. I swear. Kirkland doesn't trust me with that. She believed him. She stepped back, let him slump to the floor. Then she pulled out her phone, called 911. "This is Lena Voss. I'm at Harborline Military Medical Center, second floor, security office. I've just detained a suspect in connection with the recent attack. Send police." She hung up. Reeves stared at her from the floor, his face a mess of blood and fear. "You just signed your own death warrant," he said. "Kirkland will come for you. Let him." The police arrived 12 minutes later. She gave a statement, handed over the financial records she'd printed, and watched as they cuffed Reeve and led him away. He didn't look at her. By the time she left the hospital, the sun was rising again. She'd been awake for 36 hours. Her body ached, her mind felt like static, but she couldn't stop. Not yet. Her phone buzzed. Torres. "It's done. Story goes live in 6 hours. Front page, digital and print. I've got 3 other outlets picking it up simultaneously. By noon, everyone's going to know what Kirkland did." Will it hold? The evidence is solid. Photos, financials, testimony from sources who corroborate Cross's account. Kirkland can deny all he wants, but the court of public opinion doesn't need a conviction, just reasonable doubt. And Volkov? Interpol's issuing a warrant. He's wanted in 9 countries now. He'll spend the rest of his life running. Lena closed her eyes. "Good. What about you? Where will you be when this breaks?" "Exactly where I've always been." She ended the call, drove to her apartment, showered, changed into clean clothes, sat on the couch, and waited. At 11 a.m., her phone exploded. Texts, calls, notifications. She ignored them. Turned on the TV instead. The story was everywhere. Every major network. Every news site. Torres had done his job. Senator Kirkland's face filled the screen, flanked by lawyers denying everything. But the damage was done. Protesters were already gathering outside his office. Congressional colleagues were distancing themselves. The machinery of accountability, slow and imperfect as it was, had started grinding. By 2 p.m., Kirkland issued a statement stepping down from his committee chairmanship pending investigation. By 4 p.m., the FBI announced they were opening a formal inquiry. By 6 p.m., the deputy director Torres had mentioned, the Sentinel, was named in a leak to the press. He resigned within the hour. Lena watched it all from her couch, a cup of cold coffee in her hands. She didn't feel victorious, just tired. Her phone rang. Marlowe. "You did it." "Torres did it. I just gave him the ammunition." "Internal Affairs cleared me. Reinstated. Apparently, when senators start falling, people get very cooperative." "What about the flash drive?" "Entered into evidence. It's going to be the centerpiece of the federal case against Kirkland and everyone tied to him. Cross didn't die for nothing." Lena swallowed. "Good. There's something else. We picked up chatter. Volkov's been spotted in Belarus. Local authorities are moving to apprehend him. Will they get him? Maybe. Or maybe he'll disappear again. Guys like him always have an exit plan. As long as he's running, I'll take it." Marlowe paused. "What are you going to do now?" "Go back to work." "Just like that?" "Just like that. You know people are going to ask questions about who you are, what you did. Let them ask. I'm done hiding." Marlowe laughed softly. "You're a hell of a lot tougher than you look, Voss." "I've been told." She ended the call, sat in the silence of her apartment. Outside, the city moved on. Traffic, voices, the hum of life continuing. She thought about Cross, about Bryn, about the people who died because powerful men played games with lives that weren't theirs to spend. And she thought about the version of herself she'd tried to leave behind. The ghost, the operative, the woman who'd walked away from it all and thought she could build something different. Maybe she had. Maybe being a nurse wasn't running from who she'd been. Maybe it was proof that people could change, that the skills you used to take lives could also save them. She stood, stretched, felt the ache in her muscles, the bruises forming under her clothes. Tomorrow, she'd go back to Harborline. Back to the 3rd floor, the broken coffee pot, the patients who didn't know her name. And if Volkov or Kirkland or anyone else decided to come for her again, she'd be ready. Her phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. "Voss?" A voice she didn't recognize. Male, young, nervous. "My name is Lieutenant Daniel Marsh. I was on Captain Cross's team. In Cordova. Her heart stopped. You're alive? Barely. I was on patrol when the ambush happened. By the time I got back, everyone was dead. I've been in hiding ever since. But I saw the news about Kirkland, about what you did. Where are you? Doesn't matter, I just wanted to say thank you. Cross saved my life more times than I can count, and you made sure his death meant something. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. You did more than anyone else tried to, that's enough. The line went quiet. Then Marsh spoke again, his voice steadier now. There's one more thing. Cross told me if anything ever happened to him, to make sure someone got the full story. Not just the photos, the whole story. What do you mean? He kept a journal. Detailed accounts of every mission, every operation, every dirty deal he witnessed. It's in a safe deposit box. Bank of Raven City, downtown branch. Box number 4127, the keys with his personal effects. Lena's breath caught. His effects were transferred to federal custody. Then you better get them back. Why are you telling me this? Because Cross trusted you, and because I'm done watching good people die while bad people walk free. The call ended. Lena stared at her phone. A journal, full accounts. If Cross had documented everything, it was more than just evidence. It was a roadmap to every corrupt deal, every covered-up operation, every lie that had led to his team's death. And it was sitting in a bank vault, waiting. She grabbed her jacket, headed for the door. But before she could open it, someone knocked. She froze, hand on the doorknob, listening. Another knock, harder. She looked through the peephole. Agent Marlowe stood in the hallway, flanked by 2 federal marshals. Her face was grim. Lena opened the door. What's going on? Marlowe didn't meet her eyes. Lena Voss, you're under arrest for unauthorized disclosure of classified materials and obstruction of a federal investigation. The marshals moved forward, handcuffs ready. Lena stared at Marlowe. You can't be serious. Kirkland's lawyers filed an emergency motion. Judge signed the warrant an hour ago. I tried to stop it, but this is retaliation. You know that. I know, but my hands are tied. One of the marshals stepped forward. Ma'am, please turn around and place your hands behind your back. Lena looked at Marlowe one more time, saw the apology in her eyes, the helplessness. Then she turned around, felt the cold metal close around her wrists. As they led her down the hallway, past neighbors who peeked through cracked doors, past the life she'd tried to build, she thought about the journal, about the safe deposit box, about the one piece of evidence that could finish this. And she realized the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The federal holding cell was 8 feet by 10, concrete walls painted institutional beige, a metal bench bolted to the floor. Lena sat with her back against the wall, hands free now that processing was complete. They'd taken her phone, her keys, her jacket, photographed her, fingerprinted her, asked questions she didn't answer. Through the small window in the door, she could see marshals moving past, their footsteps echoing in the corridor. She'd been here 4 hours. No lawyer, no charges read beyond the warrant, just waiting. The door opened. Marlowe stepped in, alone. She looked exhausted. They're holding you for 72 hours while they build the case. Lena didn't respond. Kirkland's team is pushing hard. They want you charged with espionage, conspiracy, everything they can throw. The goal is to discredit you before the trial even starts. So I'm the narrative they need. Exactly. Marlowe sat on the bench several feet away. But here's the thing. The story Torres published, it's spreading faster than they can contain it. Social media is on fire. Protests outside Kirkland's office have tripled. Congress is calling for hearings. He's losing control. Good. But if they convict you, it gives him ammunition, makes you look like a rogue operative, a criminal. It muddies the water just enough that reasonable people start questioning the evidence. Lena turned her head, met Marlowe's eyes. What about the journal? The one Marsh mentioned. Marlowe's expression shifted. I pulled Cross's personal effects from evidence. There was no key. Either it was never there, or someone removed it. Reeve. Maybe. Or someone higher up. Either way, we can't access that safe deposit box without it. Lena leaned her head back against the wall. Then we find another way. How? You're in federal custody. I'm barely hanging on to my clearance. We're out of moves. No, we're not. Marlowe stared at her. What are you thinking? How many people know about the journal? Just us? And Marsh? And whoever took the key, which means they're worried about what's in that box. Lena stood, paced the small cell. If they were confident it didn't matter, they'd just destroy it. But they can't. Not without drawing attention, so they took the key and waited. Waited for what? For this. For me to be locked up, discredited, out of the picture. Then they can quietly access the box, remove the journal, and erase the last piece of evidence. Marlowe nodded slowly. So we force their hand, make them think the journal's about to go public. Exactly. How? Lena stopped pacing. You're going to leak a story. Anonymous source claims Cross left a detailed journal documenting illegal operations. It's in a safe deposit box at the Bank of Raven City. Tomorrow morning, the press is going to be camped outside that bank. And whoever has the key will panic. They'll have to move. And when they do, we'll be watching. Marlowe stood. I'll need 12 hours to set it up. Can you hold out that long? I don't have a choice. Marlowe knocked on the door. A marshal opened it. She paused in the doorway, looked back. For what it's worth, I believe you. Everything you did. Everything you're trying to do. It matters. Tell me that when this is over. Marlowe left. The door locked behind her. Lena sat back down. The hours crawled by. She tried to sleep, but couldn't. Her mind kept circling back to the same questions. Who had the key? How deep did Kirkland's network run? And if they managed to retrieve the journal, would it be enough? At 6 a.m., the cell door opened again. A different marshal, younger, less experienced. You're being transferred. Where? District Courthouse. Arraignment hearing. They cuffed her again, led her through corridors and into a transport van. 2 other inmates sat in the back, both men, both ignoring her. The van pulled out of the federal building and into morning traffic. Lena watched the city pass through the small windows. Raven City looked the same as always. People rushing to work, cars honking, life continuing. But underneath, she knew things were shifting. Torres's story had detonated in the public consciousness. Kirkland was scrambling, and somewhere, someone with a key was making a decision. The courthouse was a granite fortress downtown, steps crowded with reporters and cameras. They hustled Lena through a side entrance, up to a holding room adjacent to the courtroom. A public defender was waiting, a woman in her 30s, sharp suit, tired eyes. I'm Sarah Lennox. I've been assigned to your case. I didn't ask for a lawyer. You don't get to choose. Arraignment's in 20 minutes. They're charging you with unauthorized disclosure of classified information and obstruction. Both federal offenses. You're looking at 10 to 15 years if convicted. Lena sat. What's the prosecution's case? Circumstantial but strong. They're claiming you stole classified files from Captain Cross and leaked them to the press. They'll argue you acted out of personal vendetta or foreign influence. That's absurd. Doesn't matter. They just need to create doubt, make you look unstable, unreliable. The jury will do the rest. What about the evidence? The photos? The financial records? They're arguing it was all obtained illegally, fruit of the poison tree. If they can suppress the evidence, the case against Kirkland collapses. Lena's jaw tightened. So this arraignment isn't about me. It's about protecting him. Welcome to federal court. They led her into the courtroom. It was smaller than she expected, wood-paneled, American flag in the corner. The judge was already seated, a woman in her 60s, gray hair, steel glasses. The prosecution table was crowded with lawyers. Kirkland's people, probably. Lena stood before the judge, Lennox beside her. The charges were read. Unauthorized disclosure, obstruction, conspiracy to commit espionage. The judge looked at her over the glasses. How do you plead? Not guilty. Bail, the lead prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the defendant is a former Black Ops operative with extensive training in evasion and combat. She has no permanent ties to the community and poses an extreme flight risk. We request remand without bail. Lennox countered. My client has lived in Raven City for 3 years, maintained steady employment, and has no criminal record. She's not a flight risk. She's a scapegoat. The judge considered. Bail is set at $500,000, cash or bond. Next hearing in 30 days. The gavel fell. Lena was led out, back to the holding room. Lennox followed. $500,000. Do you have that? No. Then you're staying in custody until trial. How long? Months. Maybe longer if they drag it out. Lena leaned against the wall. What about the journal? Has anyone mentioned it? Lennox frowned. What journal? Never mind. They took her back to the federal building, back to the cell, but this time Marlowe was waiting outside. It worked. Torres ran the story an hour ago. Every news outlet in the city is covering it. Bank of Raven City is under siege. Anyone show up yet? Not yet. But we've got surveillance on every entrance. If someone tries to access that box, we'll know. Lena sat on the bench. How long do we wait? As long as it takes. 3 hours passed, then 4. Lena paced the cell, her mind restless. She thought about Cross, bleeding out in a foreign desert while his team died around him. She thought about Bryn, manipulated and terrified, killed because she knew too much. She thought about every person whose life had been destroyed because powerful men treated them as expendable. At 2 p.m., Marlowe's phone rang. She answered, listened, her expression sharpening. She hung up. Someone just entered the bank. Male, mid-50s, suit. He went straight to the safe deposit vault. Who is he? We ran facial recognition. His name is Peter Gaines, Deputy Chief of Staff to Senator Kirkland. Lena's pulse quickened. He has the key. Looks like it. My team's inside the bank. They're watching him now. What's the plan? We wait until he opens the box. Then we move in. And if he destroys the journal, he won't get the chance. 15 minutes later, Marlowe's phone rang again. This time, when she answered, Lena could hear shouting through the speaker. Marlowe's face went pale. What happened? Gaines opened the box, pulled out a leather-bound notebook. Then he saw our agents and ran. They're pursuing him now. Did they get him? Not yet. Marlowe's phone buzzed with a new call. She switched lines. Talk to me. She listened. Then she smiled. They got him. He's in custody. And they have the journal. Lena exhaled. For the first time in days, she felt something close to relief. Marlowe hung up. Gaines is being brought in for questioning. The journal's being logged as evidence. Whatever's in it, it's about to become public record. How fast can you get me out of here? Working on it. Lennox is filing an emergency motion to dismiss the charges based on new evidence. If the journal backs up your story, the prosecution's case falls apart. How long? 24 hours. Maybe less. Lena sat back down. Then I wait. The next day unfolded in fragments. Lena was moved to a different cell, this one with a window that actually showed the sky. She watched clouds drift past, tried not to think about what would happen if the journal didn't contain what they needed. At 4 p.m., Lennox appeared. She was smiling. Charges dropped. You're free to go. Lena stood slowly. What did the journal say? Everything. Cross documented every illegal operation he witnessed over 2 years. Names, dates, financial transactions. Kirkland's all over it. So are half a dozen other officials. The DOJ is opening a full investigation. Kirkland's been arrested. Lena felt the weight lift, piece by piece. What about Gaines? Flipped. He's cooperating in exchange for a reduced sentence. Gave up everyone, the deputy director, the contractors, the whole network. And Volkov? Interpol picked him up in Minsk this morning. Extradition's already in motion. He'll stand trial in the U.S. Lena walked to the door. Lennox handed her a plastic bag with her belongings, phone, keys, wallet. She signed the release forms, walked out of the cell, through the corridors, and into the lobby. Marlowe was waiting. Welcome back. Thanks. They walked out together into the late afternoon sun. The steps of the federal building were crowded with reporters, but Marlowe steered her toward a side exit, away from the cameras. What now? Marlowe asked. I go back to work. You sure? After everything that's happened, you could take time. Process this. Lena looked at her. Processing doesn't change what needs to be done. Marlowe smiled. You're impossible, you know that? I've been told. They parted ways. Lena walked to her car, drove through the city as the sun dipped toward the horizon. She didn't go home. She went to Harbor Line. The hospital was quiet when she arrived, evening shift, most of the day staff gone. She clocked in, changed into scrubs, and headed to the 3rd floor. The nurse's station was nearly empty. One nurse she didn't recognize, an orderly restocking supplies. She checked the patient board, found her assignments, and got to work. Room 312. Post-surgical patient, recovering from gallbladder removal. She checked his vitals, adjusted his pain medication, made notes in his chart. He was asleep, unaware of her presence. Room 318. Burn victim, improving but still critical. She changed his dressing, spoke softly to him, even though he couldn't respond. Told him he was doing well, that he'd be okay. Room 324. An elderly woman with pneumonia. Awake this time, eyes following Lena as she moved around the room. "You're the one, aren't you?" the woman said, her voice thin and raspy. Lena paused. "I'm sorry." "The one from the news. The nurse who stopped those men." "I'm just a nurse." "No, you're more than that." The woman reached out, took Lena's hand. Her grip was weak but steady. "Thank you for what you did." Lena didn't know what to say. She just nodded, squeezed the woman's hand gently, and finished her work. By the time her shift ended, it was past midnight. She walked through the empty corridors, her footsteps echoing. At the main entrance, she found Dr. Calloway leaning against the reception desk, holding a cup of coffee. "Voss, didn't expect to see you tonight. I work here." "I know, I just thought, after everything," he trailed off. "The hospital board met this morning. They want to recognize you, formally, for what you did." "That's not necessary." "It is. You saved lives. You exposed corruption. You stood up when no one else would." He set down his coffee. "And I owe you an apology. A real one. I underestimated you, dismissed you, treated you like you didn't matter. I was wrong." Lena looked at him, saw the sincerity in his face, the discomfort of someone not used to admitting fault. "Apology accepted." He nodded, relief visible. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're back." "So am I." She left the hospital, walked to her car. The city stretched out around her, lights glittering in the darkness. She drove home slowly, taking side streets, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. When she reached her apartment, she found a package waiting outside her door. No return address. She carried it inside, set it on the table, and opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, handwritten. She recognized the script immediately. "Lena, by the time you read this, I'll probably be dead. If you're reading it, that means someone got my journal to the right people. I'm trusting that someone is you. I don't know why you ended up at Harborline or why you were assigned to my case, but I know you're not just a nurse. I've seen enough operators in my life to recognize one when I meet them, even if they're wearing scrubs. Whatever you were before, whatever you walked away from, it doesn't matter. What matters is you chose to step up when no one else would. That takes a different kind of courage, the kind that saves lives instead of taking them. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. Peace, maybe. Or purpose. Either way, you've earned it. Thank you. Captain Vincent Cross." Lena read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and set it beside the journal she'd been given as evidence. 2 pieces of a man's final legacy, left in her hands. She walked to the window, looked out at the city. Tomorrow, she'd go back to Harborline. Back to the patients who needed her, the work that grounded her, the life she'd chosen. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel the weight of everything that had happened. The fear, the loss, the battles fought in corridors and courtrooms, and the shadowed spaces between. She thought about the version of herself who'd walked away from the Black Ops world 3 years ago, certain that leaving was the only way to survive. And she thought about the version standing here now, scarred and exhausted, but still standing. Maybe healing wasn't about forgetting who you'd been. Maybe it was about choosing who you wanted to become. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marlowe. "Kirkland's trial starts in 3 months. You'll be called as a witness. Just a heads up." Lena typed back, "I'll be ready." Another text. "Also, something you should know. The Marine Corps is awarding Cross a posthumous medal. They asked if you'd be willing to accept it on behalf of his family. No pressure." Lena stared at the message. Then she typed, "Yes." She set the phone down, walked to her bedroom, lay down fully clothed, and closed her eyes. For the first time in a week, she slept. The next morning, she woke to sunlight streaming through the window. She showered, dressed, made coffee that actually tasted decent this time. Checked the news. Kirkland's arrest was still the top story, his face plastered across every front page. Public opinion had turned. Protests demanded accountability. The machinery of justice, slow and imperfect, was grinding forward. She drove to Harbor Line, clocked in, headed to the third floor. The nurses' station was crowded this time. Bryn's replacement, a quiet woman named Iris, was reviewing charts. An orderly Lena vaguely recognized was restocking supplies, and Dr. Calloway stood at the counter, talking to a group of residents. When Lena approached, the residents went quiet, stared at her. She could see it in their faces, recognition, curiosity, something close to awe. Calloway cleared his throat. "Everyone, this is Lena Voss. If you haven't met her yet, you will. She's one of the best nurses on this floor. Learn from her." The residents nodded. One of them, a young man with nervous energy, stepped forward. "It's an honor to meet you." Lena didn't know how to respond to that, so she just nodded and moved past them toward the patient rooms. The rest of the shift unfolded like any other. Vitals checked, medications administered, dressings changed, conversations with patients who were scared or in pain or just lonely. She moved through it all with the same quiet efficiency she'd always had, the same attention to detail. But something had shifted. People saw her now, not as invisible, not as forgettable, but as someone who mattered. At lunch, Iris sat beside her in the break room. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "How did you do it? Stay calm during the attack? Most of us were panicking." Lena thought about it. "I just focused on what needed to be done. Everything else was noise." "That simple? That complicated?" Iris smiled. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you were here. We all are." Lena didn't respond, just sipped her coffee and stared at the TV in the corner, muted footage of Kirkland being led into a courthouse in handcuffs. The weeks that followed became a rhythm. Work, sleep, repeat. Lena testified at Kirkland's preliminary hearings, her words measured and precise. She watched as his legal team tried to discredit her, paint her as a rogue operative, a liar. But the journal, Cross's meticulous documentation, was unshakable. Every claim she made, every accusation backed up by his handwriting. Kirkland was denied bail. His trial date was set. One by one, his co-conspirators flipped or were arrested. The network collapsed. Volkov's extradition took longer, tangled in diplomatic red tape. But eventually he was brought back to the U.S., held in a maximum security facility while prosecutors built their case. And Lena returned to her life at Harbor Line. The hospital held a small ceremony recognizing her actions during the attack. They gave her a plaque she didn't want and applause that made her uncomfortable. But she accepted it because the patients and staff deserved to feel safe again. To believe that someone had their back. 3 months after Kirkland's arrest, Lena stood in a military cemetery outside Raven City. Rows of white headstones stretched toward the horizon, the sky overcast and heavy with the promise of rain. A small crowd had gathered, Marine Corps officers, Cross's family. A few reporters kept at a respectful distance. Lena stood near the front, holding the folded flag they'd given her. Cross's sister, a woman in her 40s with her brother's eyes, stood beside her. "He talked about you," the sister said quietly. "In his last phone call, said there was a nurse at the hospital who reminded him of the people he used to serve with. Strong, quiet, reliable." Lena looked at her. "He was a good man." "He was, and he'd be glad you're the one holding that flag." The ceremony was brief. A general spoke about Cross's service, his sacrifice, the legacy he left behind. Taps played, the sound cutting through the stillness. And when it was over, Lena placed the flag on Cross's headstone, a small bronze marker that bore his name and rank. She stood there for a long time after everyone else had left, the wind pulling at her hair, the sky darkening overhead. She thought about the choices that had led her here, the life she'd walked away from, the one she'd built in its place. And she realized that maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about using it to build something better. When she finally turned to leave, Marlo was waiting by the cemetery gate. "You okay?" "Yeah." They walked together toward the parking lot. Marlo glanced at her. "So what's next for you?" "Same as always, work, patience, life." "That's it?" Lena stopped, looked at her. "What else is there?" Marlo smiled. "I don't know. Maybe training other people, sharing what you know. There are a lot of nurses out there who could use someone like you teaching them how to stay calm in a crisis. I'm not a teacher. You are, whether you realize it or not. Marlowe handed her a business card. Defense Department is looking for consultants, people with tactical experience who can train medical personnel in high-risk environments, combat zones, disaster areas, places where being a nurse isn't enough. Lena took the card. I'll think about it. Good. Because the world needs more people like you, people who don't run when things get bad. They parted ways. Lena drove back to Raven City, the card sitting on the passenger seat. She thought about Marlowe's words, about the idea of teaching, of passing on what she'd learned. It wasn't something she'd considered before, but maybe it was time to stop hiding from who she'd been and start using it to help others. That night, she sat in her apartment, the city lights glittering outside her window. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages. One from Torres, asking if she'd be willing to do an interview about her experience. One from Lennox, congratulating her on the trial outcome. One from an unknown number that simply said, "Thank you." She set the phone down, picked up Cross's letter, read it one more time. Whatever you're looking for, peace, maybe, or purpose, either way, you've earned it. She thought about that, thought about the patients she'd saved, the corruption she'd exposed, the lives that had been changed because she refused to stay silent. And she realized that maybe she'd found both. 6 months later, Lena stood in front of a classroom at a military training facility outside Raven City. 20 nurses sat before her, all of them volunteers for a new program, tactical medical response training. They looked nervous, uncertain, the same way she probably had years ago. She didn't start with introductions or credentials. She just looked at them and said, "You're going to face situations where everything you learned in school won't be enough, where the textbook answer gets people killed. I'm here to teach you what to do when the world stops making sense, and all you have is your training and your instincts." They leaned forward, listening. "You're going to learn how to stay calm under fire, how to make decisions in seconds, how to save lives when everyone around you is panicking, and when you leave here, you're going to be the person others look to when everything falls apart." She paused. "Because that's what we do. We don't run. We don't hide. We stand up, and we do the work no one else can." The room was silent. Then one of the nurses raised her hand. "What if we're not strong enough?" Lena looked at her. "Strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, one decision at a time, one patient at a time, one moment when you choose to step forward instead of back." She glanced at the rest of the class. "You're all here because you already made that choice. Now we're going to make sure you're ready for what comes next." By the end of the day, she was exhausted. But it was a different kind of tired, the kind that came from purpose, from knowing that what you did mattered. As she packed up her materials, one of the nurses approached. Young, maybe mid-20s, with the wide-eyed determination of someone who hadn't been broken yet. "I just wanted to say thank you for doing this, for teaching us." Lena nodded. "You'll do fine." "I hope so." The nurse hesitated. "Can I ask you something? After everything you've been through, do you ever regret it? Stepping up? Getting involved?" Lena thought about the question. Thought about Cross, Bryn, the night she'd spent staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision. Thought about the scars she carried, visible and not. "No," she said finally, "because if I hadn't, people would have died. And I can live with a lot of things, but not that." The nurse smiled. "I'll remember that." She left. Lena stood alone in the empty classroom, the late afternoon sun slanting through the windows. She thought about the version of herself who'd walked into Harborline 3 years ago, invisible and forgotten, trying to disappear into a life that didn't ask too much of her. That person was gone. And in her place was someone who'd learned that you couldn't outrun who you were. You could only choose what to do with it. She picked up her bag, turned off the lights, and walked out. The city stretched out before her, messy, complicated, full of people who needed help and didn't always deserve it. But that was the job. That was the choice she'd made, to stand up when others stayed silent, to fight when it would have been easier to walk away, to prove that the quietest person in the room could also be the most dangerous, not because of what they could destroy, but because of what they refused to let be destroyed. And as she drove back into Raven City, the sun setting behind her, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was exactly where she was supposed to be.